This is Jen from Palm Trees and Reads, and I am here with the mid-year book freakout tag. If you don't know what that is, it's where some booktubers have come up with a few questions that summarize your reading year so far. I have had an incredible reading year, not just in terms of quantity of books. As of the time of this filming, I've read over 120 books, which is insane because I've never read more than 100 in a year before, and it's only halfway through the year. But not only in terms of the quantity of books, but also the quality. I've discovered a lot of new favorites and a lot of new favorite authors that I'm excited to talk to you about. So if you're interested in my version of the mid-year book freakout tag, please keep watching. Okay, so the first question is, what is your favorite read of 2024 so far? And this is really difficult because I've read so many good books so far this year, but I narrowed it down to two. The first one is Magnolia Park's Into the Dark, but this is actually just symbolizing the entire Magnolia Park series because I did read the entire series this year and absolutely loved it. But this is the fifth book in the conclusion of Magnolia and BJ's story. I did not expect to love this series as much as I did. I think a lot of people are putting off reading the fifth book because of the events of the third book and the end of the third book. And how sad it is, honestly, and just not wanting to continue on with it. And I'm not going to lie, this is a really, really sad book. There are a lot of really sad things that happen in this book. However, the entire tone of the book is not just one note. It's not just solely depressing. And that's really what I loved about it. There's just so much depth to the characters and so much character development and so much work that they put into building themselves and making them better versions of themselves. So people who have only read the first book, the first Magnolia Parks, just say, oh, it's about, Gossip Girl in London. It's about a toxic relationship. That's honestly an oversimplification if you've read the entire series up to this point, because there's so much more depth than that. So if you're one of those people who hasn't read the fifth book yet, please, please do. I promise it's amazing. I love it so much. And then my second favorite, look at this amazing cover. I do have the Waterstones exclusive edition first print of the regular, not indie version. When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. I absolutely love this. This is a fantasy romance. It defies all tropes and all conventions. It's just utterly fantastic. Please give it a try if you haven't already, and please go in blind because there's so many reveals and so many things that happen throughout the book, and I don't want to spoil any of it for you by giving away even the tiniest bit of the plot. It has every trope in the book and more, but it's done in such a unique and interesting way. So I would highly recommend that you pick this up. The next question is best sequel that you've read so far in 2024. And surprise, surprise, I couldn't just pick one, so I picked two. The first is A Reaper in the Gates, which is An Ember in the Ashes, book 3 by Sabaa Tahir. I love this whole series. This is a straight up fantasy series. It leans more YA, but not in an annoying way at all. Those looking for romance, you won't really find it in here, but please don't let that put you off. This is accessible fantasy if you want to try high fantasy, but in an accessible way where you won't be super confused by the characters and plots. I highly recommend this series. And currently, as I'm posting this, there is a read-along going on, I believe by Penguin Random House, who published this series. And there's a set of new covers as well. Highly recommend this one. This is the Black Dagger Brotherhood series by J.R. Ward. I'm obsessed. I love this series. I could easily have put this book and the first two books as my favorites of 2024, but I didn't want to be repetitive. So this is the third book, and it is Zeta's story. This is a paranormal romance. Sarah J. Maas was heavily inspired by this series. I highly recommend that you read it as soon as possible if you love paranormal romance. It is about a series of vampires that are the last defenders of their kind against a group that wants to kill all vampires. And vampires are living on the East Coast amongst humans, but humans don't really know about them. So if that sounds good to you, please pick up this series. The next question is a new 2024 release that you haven't gotten to yet but really want to. There are honestly so many. I'm going to mention Love Unwritten by Lauren Asher is one that I really want to get to. The new Ali Hazelwood that just came out, Not in Love, is something I really want to get to. But I'm also going to mention Taming 7 by Chloe Walsh, which is book 5 in the Boys of Tommen series. It is the newest release. I just got this in from my library. I have not picked this up yet because I am still in the middle of book 3, which is Saving Six. This does start on a new couple, but you do have to read all the books in order. So I've not read it yet, but I've really been enjoying this series. It does read very YA. I don't often recommend YA books on my channel. There's a lot of really heavy topics, but the characters do act their age, which is 15, 16. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag in that regard, but I've been really enjoying this series. It's very emotional and I do recommend it. The next question is most anticipated release for the second half of 2024. And for this, I did bring out my trusty reading journal from Notebook Therapy because I've written down all of my anticipated releases in here. I think my number one anticipated release is Striker by Anna Wong, which comes out on September 24th, and I have already pre-ordered that one, as well as The Crowns of Nyaxia #3 by Carissa Broadbent, which is called The Songbird and the Heart of Stone, which I've also pre-ordered, but a few others that I want to mention. There are a lot, honestly. Phantasma is a new fantasy romance that comes out on September 3rd. A new Elsie Silver, the second in her new Rose Hill series, comes out on September 3rd. That's called Wild Eyes. On September 17th, Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling is getting re-released, and I'm really excited about that one. I was going to pick it up this year, but it's been re-edited and significantly shortened, and I've been hearing good things about people who've gotten the arc of the new shortened book, so I'm going to wait for that re-release. Then we have Reign of Rose by Kate Golden. This is the third and final book in the Dawn of Onyx series. If you know, you know. If you've read that second book, you are devastated, and October cannot come soon enough for Reign of Rose. We also have the kickoff of a new fantasy series by Saba Tahir, and that is called Air. And then in November and December, we've got some really good ones as well. On November 5th, we've got the third book by Lila Sage, which is Lost and Lassoed. I absolutely loved the first two, Done and Dusted and Swift and Saddled, and I highly recommend this cowboy romance series. We have the next Emily McIntyre fractured fairy tale called Hexed. We have the sequel to What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez, which is called Where the Library Hides. Then we have the final book in the Artifacts of Uranos series by Nisha J. Chuli, which is called Tale of the Heart Queen. Honestly, so excited for all of those. Okay, next we have the biggest disappointment of 2024 so far. I don't really want to dwell on these, and I don't really want to dwell on the negative because it's overall been such a great reading year. But I'm just going to mention a couple, and they were 3 stars to me, so they weren't bad by any means. They just weren't my absolute favorites. I'm going to say that the first one was the new Elsie Silver book. Just wasn't as good as the Chestnut Spring series to me. I didn't dislike it. Again, it was 3 stars. I just felt it was kind of like fine, bland, like I didn't feel a ton of connection to the characters, didn't really care if they got together or not. Abby Jimenez might just not be for me because just for the summer, it just didn't have enough romance in it for me. It was too much like not romance. I know this is the trend right now, not criticizing. I know a lot of people want to read these more emotional stories that are more like the characters going through therapy and working on themselves, and maybe have less of a romance plot. I just felt like just for the summer, didn't quite have enough romance. This wasn't really a disappointment because I just don't think this author is for me, but Ali Hazelwood, I read Checkmate and Bride in 2024, and I didn't love either one. I gave them both 3 stars. I just don't think Ali Hazelwood is for me. I don't really connect with her writing style. I know I'm the only person on earth to say that, so if you love Ali Hazelwood, amazing, good for you. On the reverse side, the biggest surprise of 2024, there have honestly been so many. I've had an amazing reading year. I want to mention the new Emily Henry book, Happy Place, because I haven't had amazing luck with the 2 Emily Henry books that I read previously, but I actually really, really like this one. I thought it was great. I had so much fun with it. I totally get the Emily Henry hype now. It did have an annoying miscommunication third act breakup, but it didn't last very long, so that didn't bother me too much. So I love that one. And I also want to mention The Fake Out by Stephanie Archer. This book kind of came out of nowhere to me. It's an indie romance. It's a hockey romance set in Canada. And I know I just saw a lot of people on Book Talk like suddenly give this book 5 stars, and I thought this is intriguing. I'll pick this up. Ended up loving it. So there's a little indie romance rec for you. The next question is new favorite author, either a debut author or new to me. I'm going to go with 2 new to me authors who are both named Penn. I know that's really weird, but Penn Douglas and Penn Cole. So Penn Cole wrote the Kindred's Curse saga, which you've probably heard of if you are into fantasy romance because it is currently blowing up on Book Talk, but it deserves all of the hype. I love the Kindred's Curse saga. The first three have already come out, and the fourth one is about to come out sometime within the next few months. We don't have a release date yet, but I am on the ARC team for that, so I'm super excited to help promote and give this book all the hype that it deserves. This is a world heavy fantasy romance. If you are a fantasy romance fan, it's got all of the good enemies to lover goodness with a shadow daddy. Then the other new favorite author is Penelope Douglas. I read the entire Devil's Night series this year and absolutely loved it. There was just something in it. It just made me a dark romance girly, which I never thought I would be before, but now I'm on a dark romance kick because of them. And I've also read Bully, and I am about to pick up more books in that universe because I just absolutely loved it. Newest fictional crush. I'm going to go with the Penn Cole book boyfriend. Luther, the main love interest in the Kindred's Curse saga. He is heir to the throne, is all of the shadow daddy goodness, touch her and die, just everything you love in a fiercely protective fantasy romance hero, with the heroine, of course, being too dumb and naive to realize that she likes him too and that he's into her. Obviously, so much angst, so much teenage drama, but yeah, Luther is fantastic and I love him. Next is a book that made you cry. And again, I have to go to the Magnolia Park series for this, specifically Into the Dark. It's really sad, really emotional, but totally worth the read. You'll be devastated in the best way, and then your heart put back together again. So I highly recommend it. Next is a book that made you happy. And for that, I have to go with Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. I just really enjoyed this. It's a really good time. It's a small town romance, a cowboy, return to hometown, brother's best friend romance. It's just a really good time. I just didn't expect to love it as much as I did. And then I also want to mention one other because it didn't make me happy because it's not a happy book, but it made me laugh and cry in the course of reading this book, and that is James by Percival Everett. This is a retelling of Huckleberry Finn from the perspective of Jim, who is enslaved and runs away from enslavement in the 1800s United States. This book is fantastic. I absolutely was just blown away by it. I seriously cannot say enough good things about it. It's a little change of pace from what I usually read on this channel because I do read mostly fantasy, romance, and mystery thrillers, and this is literary fiction, but it's totally worth the read, even if you don't remember Huckleberry Finn. Question is the most beautiful book on your bookshelf, and I could just be repetitive and say When the Moon Hatched and Magnolia Parks again, but I do want to give some love to some indie authors. So these are two books that were very kindly sent to me by some indie dark romance authors, and I just think they're both so beautiful, and I'm just so impressed by the quality of these books, given that these authors are not traditionally published and they are just doing everything by themselves. Like, kudos to you for making these beautiful covers. So we have Savannah Lee, who kindly sent me the Midnight Mated trilogy. This is the first one. And then Ember Nicole, who sent the Broken Bounty duet. This is the second one, Survive for Me. I just love the aesthetic of both of those, which is why I have them in a really prominent case space on my bookshelf. And the last question is, what books do you really need to read by the end of this year? Oh God, there are way too many to list. But literally everything on this shelf, pretty much, I've not read yet, and they've been on my shelf for at least a year in most cases. I have read some. I've read Pachinko. I really want to read Normal People. I've heard great things. I need to read the Gilded Wolves trilogy by Roshani Chokshi. I need to read this indie fantasy called The Frost Queen's Blade by Meg Smitherman. I need to read all of these beautiful indie romance books that I've got, including Sky of Thorns, Midnight Mated, Survive for Me. I want to read If We Were Villains by ML Rio because that was making the rounds on TikTok a few years ago and I still haven't read it. So yeah, everything on the shelf is kind of a to be read. And then I also want to catch up on Sarah Adams' books. I need to read the cheat sheet so then I can read the rule book. So I do really want to read both of those this year as well. Okay, so that's going to be it for the mid-year book freakout tag. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please leave me a comment down below if you have made it this far. Please leave me the book emoji and let me know in the comments what books you have been enjoying this year. See you next time.